Hey there nation, welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. And as I, Commander CheapSkate, we are back with another episode of the Underhive Wars. This is a series of Necromunda battle reports, and this is Dominion Campaign Battle Report number 40. It is a rescue mission scenario that is played between my two friends, Death and Brother Grimm. Death is bringing the people eaters of the Helot Chaos Cultists, while Brother Grimm is playing the Pelagos Slam Kings of House Goliath. Now, I'm not sure if you guys remember or not, but in an earlier battle report for round number 7, the leader of the People Eaters, King Slender, he was actually captured by the Pelagos Slam Kings. So now the People Eaters are going to do a rescue mission to try to get the leader back, at the same time get some payback as well. So we're going to play some background music real quick. If you want to see exactly what we're bringing for this one, go ahead and pause and take a look at your own leisure. So that being said, let's get this battle report on a roll. Alright, the scenario rules for this one is Rescue Mission. The attacker gets their whole gang to use in this battle report, while the vendor starts off with 5 fighters as sentries. For deployment, the defender sets up sentries and captives anywhere on the battlefield, and the descender must deploy within 2 inches of any table edge. The objective is to rescue the captive as well as escape. Once the alarm is raised in the scenario, then each subsequent round afterwards, these 6 reinforcements arrive for the defender until the entire gang has deployed. For rewards for experience, you get 1 point of experience for all participants. If the captive is free and also takes off and escapes, he gets 1 point of experience for that. At the same time, the captive leader also gets +1 experience if he makes it. For reputation, the attacker earns 2 points of reputation for each captive that is freed, while the defender loses 1 for each captive that is free as well. And if either gang bottles out, of course, -1 to reputation. So with the scenario rules over, let's go and talk about the battle plan real quick for this one. So here's an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield. As you can see, Death as well as Brother Grimm will be playing on a 3x3 Zone Mortalis table. And you can see right here we got all the walls and the entryways opened up throughout. It looks like the Pelagos Slam Kings are deployed right smack dab in the middle of the table, while the People Eaters are deployed on the near side of the table as well. As for the battle plan, I'm not really sure what the battle plan is for this one because I am not playing in this one. I'm the arbitrator, so all I'm doing is just taking photos for the campaign. Pretty much my guess is that the People Eaters are going to try to assault the center, rescue the leader, and then try to retreat as quickly as they possibly can. So with the scenario rules over, battle plan over, let's go and talk about deployment real fast. Alright, so starting on the far left hand side of the battlefield, we have the Helot Chaos Cultists. Up in the front, that is the Nameless, that is a Chaos spawn. Right behind him in the back, that is Bloodraiser. He's a Cult Witch with a flak armor, 2-handed axe. He's got auto pistol as well as a near to insanity, dark shield, as well as the scouring abilities. And right behind him is Nerf number 1, the Chaos Familiar. To the left hand side, taking point, that is half face number 2. He's got flak armor, auto pistol, frag grenades, as well as a maul. Right behind him is Bin Bag, another Cultist, Helot Cultist, who's a good flak armor, auto gun, as well as an auto pistol. And behind him is Socket to the right. He is a Cultist who's armed with a flak armor, auto pistol, maul as frag grenades. And next on the left hand side, that is Hoodie, who is equipped with that auto gun, flak armor, as well as auto pistol. And that pretty much makes the left hand side for the People Eaters. And here's a close up of the right hand deployment. On the left hand side, taking point, that is the Mangler, that is an Ambot who's got Tunneling Claws, Grab Fist, as well as Light Carapace armor. He's also got the Twisted Flesh ability. Right behind him is Bloodwing, another Cultist who's got flak armor, a long rifle, and sword. And behind him on the left hand side, that is Gazer, who's a Helot Cultist with flak armor, auto pistol, frag grenades, as well as a maul. And right next to him on the right hand side, that is the Oculoid, who's got a flak armor, auto gun, as well as auto pistol. On that little walkway there on the far right hand side, taking point, that is Nerf number 2. Nerf number 3. He is a Helot Cultist. He's got a sword, stub gun, dum-dum rounds, as well as a flak armor. Behind him is Nerf number 2, who's got flak armor, a grenade launcher with frag, and crack grenade and maul. Has got the Twisted Flesh mutation. And right behind them is the Nerf Herder, who is a Helot Cultist. He's got flak armor, auto pistol with frag grenades, as well as a maul. And then up in the front and the top there, using the infiltrate special rules, is Snarl. That is a Cult Disciple. He's got mesh armor, a heavy stubber, he's got an auto pistol and drop rig. He's got the Inure to Insanity as well as the Infiltrate special rules. And that pretty much makes up the deployment for the People Eaters on this one. So in the middle of the table is the Plaga Slam Kings. Right in the center is King Slender, that is the gang's cult demagogue. He normally carries mesh armor, a cult icon, a shotgun with solid scatter shot, a sword, and auto pistol. But right now, though, he doesn't have any equipment because he's currently captured. Right next to him, right behind him, in fact, that is Stinkum, who is a juvie. He's got furnace plate, stub gun, dum-dum rounds, as well as a maw. Up on the top, that is Craze, that is a ganger who's armed with furnace plate, stub cannon, incendiary charge, as well as a spudjacker. Next to him on the right-hand side, that is, I believe that is, what's his name, Stink Gum. He's a ganger who's got furnace plate, stub cannon, incendiary charge, as well as a stun gun. Right next to him on the left-hand side, that is Porter. Porter is a ganger who's armed with furnace plate, a bolt gun with frag grenades, a stub gun, as well as dum-dum rounds, and taking point in the bottom, that is Gage. He's got furnace plate, a bolt gun, as well as frag grenades. He's got a stub gun, as well as dum-dum rounds for that pistol. And that makes up his center deployment. And off to the side is the rest of the Pelago Slam King. Starting on the left-hand side, that is Ragnarsson, who's an ammo jack. He's equipped with power sword, mesh armor, and bolt gun, as well as the munitioneer, there we go, skill. Right next to him is Rager. On the right-hand side, that is Ganger's armor with furnace plate. He's got a shotgun with solid scatter shot, as well as a brute cleaver. Next to him, that big, huge monstrosity is Grushka. He is a Zerker with furnace plate, mutated fist, bone spurs, as well as stem slug stash. He's got the combat drugs and impetuous special rule. Up in the front is Blitzkrieg Bob, the leader. He's got furnace plate, a grenade launcher with frag and crack grenades. He's also equipped with brute cleaver. He's got a commanding presence, as well as the overseer skill. Next to him in the back on the right, that is Grizz, who's a champion. He's armed with furnace plate, a heavy stubber with bolt gun. He's got a suspensor on the heavy stubber. He's got the nerves of steel skill. And behind him is Fleshstick, who's a ganger armed with furnace plates. He's armed with a renderizer, as well as a stub gun with dum-dum rounds, as well as incendiary charges and a stem slug stash. And on the right-hand side, that is the Headhunter. He's a ganger armed with furnace plate, a last gun, as well as an axe. And that pretty much makes up the Pelago Slam Kings on this one. So with the deployment over, we go directly to the top of turn number 1, and both O'Death and Brother Grimm roll off for initiative to see who goes first. So the text ready to turn number 1, and Brother Grimm gets to go first. And the first of his sentries that is selected is Stinkum. Unfortunately for him, though, he lost control of the character. He basically lost it to O'Death, so O'Death moved him up to the north. His normal movement allowance, so that way he's no longer facing anybody. Meanwhile, for O'Death's very first activation, he activates Blood Razor, who then also has a group activation with Nerf number 1 as well as a Nameless. They both actually do double movements, moving up to the main hallway leading directly into the center of the battlefield. And once again, Stinkum is also randomly selected again from the deck for sentry duty, and unfortunately for Brother Grimm, he also loses control of this character, so because of that, O'Death decides to move him up another 5 inches away from the center of the table up to the northern part of the battlefield. And for O'Death's next activation, he decides to do a group activation with both Nerf number 2 as well as Nerf number 3. And those guys move together as one, moving up to the entry in the right-hand side of the battlefield, right next to Snarl. They use the Sneech's favor in order to do that. Oh, sorry, not Sneech's favor, Slanesh's favor in order to do that. So Brother Grimm is then activated next, which in case he sends Porter heading up forward, he moves up his normal movement allowance directly towards the entryway into the center of the battlefield. He does, of course, scan to see if he sees anybody with his vision arc, but he doesn't see it. In fact, that little ready token, the reason why that's there is represented the fact that he decides to turn 180 and face the other direction because O'Death basically won the roll-off to see where this guy ends up facing. Meanwhile, on the left-hand side of the battlefield, Half-Face takes point by doing a double movement forward. And at the same time, Stankum was activated next for the sentries. He also wanders over to the 5 inches to the right. And if you wonder where that little ray icon is next to is because my buddy O'Death won the roll-off for him. So he turns around 180, has his back directly towards the Chaos Cultists. Meanwhile, on the left-hand side, Bimbag closely follows up with Half-Face number 2, putting pressure on the left-hand flank. And once again, Stinkum is actually activated again for the randomly drawing of the deck. So because of that, Brother Grimm actually gains control of him for this round. So he comes back as normal movement allowance, heading back towards the center of the battlefield. After that occurs, Saka does a double movement to join up with Blood Razor as well as a Nameless one. So that way they can start putting their assault towards the center. And then Craze is activated next as the sentries, and unfortunately for Brother Grimm, he also lost control of this guy as well. So because that, Craze is moved up to the northern part of the table by O'Death and has his back facing the rest of the Chaos Cultists. Meanwhile, O'Death then activates Hoodie, who also does double movement to join up with Sockethead as well as Blood Razor, so that way they can prepare themselves for the initial assault directly into the center of the battlefield. And once again, Stankum is chosen and randomly selected from the deck to be the next sentry, and he goes back 5 inches the other way because Brother Grimm lost control of him and O'Death wanted him out of the deployment area. Meanwhile, O'Death then activates the Mangler, who does a double movement up to the base of that pillar there, so that way he can start making his initial assault into the center of the battlefield. And once again, Stinkum is randomly selected again to keep on patrolling. He moves another 5 inches to the right hand side with his back facing towards the Chaos Cultists. So for Odeth's next activation, he sends a Gazer, who does a double movement to go right behind the Mangler, so that way he can start making his assault to free his leader. Kraze is then randomly selected next to be the next guy doing patrol, and once again he goes back to originally into the center of the deployment area because Brother Grimm managed to get back control of him. Unfortunately though, he did fail the roll off to see whether he sees anybody, so because of that, Odeth makes him go 180 to face the opposite direction, so that way he doesn't see any Chaos Cultists coming his way. So up next, the Oculoid is then activated. There's the movement forward to join up with the Mangler, so that way he can join in the initial breaching assault. And once again, Gage is activated next, and he basically goes back to the center deployment, but he loses the roll-off to see what direction he faces, so Odeth turns him 180 to face the opposite direction. Up next, the Nerf Herder does a double movement to join with Nerf number 2 and Nerf number 3, so that way they can assault on the right-hand side of the center portion of the battlefield. And once again, Stinkum is once again activated, and he starts moving 5 inches closer towards the rest of the Chaos Cultists. Luckily for Odeth, though, he did, Brother Grimm failed the roll-off to see what direction he faces at, so because of that, he turns around 180 and faces the opposite direction. And this is where Odeth decides to take the chance. He decides to activate Bloodwing next, who takes a basic action to aim his long rifle, and another basic action to open fire with his long rifle directly into, Kraze, who's across the battlefield. He does manage to hit Stinkum. I do apologize, he was aiming at Stinkum, not Kraze. He does manage to hit him, but unfortunately he fails to wound him, so right now he is currently pinned at that point. So for the very last activation, once again, Stinkum is basically chosen to move forward. He moves up his normal 5 inches and spots Snarl right next to him, and that sets off the alarm, so because of that, the alarm kicks off, and the reinforcements will start arriving for the Goliaths. But for his last activation, Odeth activates Snarl, who turns 180, opens fire with his heavy bolter, heavy stubber, pretty much point blank right directly into Stinkum. Manages to put 2 flesh wounds on that guy as well, and also manages to pin him. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that pretty much brings up the end of the action phase. So with the end of the action phase, we go directly to the end phase, and in this case, 5 members of the Goliaths do climb up on the table, but unfortunately for Brother Grimm, though, he failed his roll-off for this group activation to see where they would land. So because of that, Odeth put all 5 warriors on the very far side of the table, right behind that wall, right in the center of it. So because there's no way for them to go forward, they have to spend extra turns going either to the left or right to try to get around this massive long wall, so that way they can start engaging the people eaters as well. So that part is really horrific for Brother Grimm. And with that, that takes us directly to the end of turn number 1. As you can see, the People Eaters are ready to prepare to assault through the center, heading up to that center gateway there, as well as to the right-hand side as well. They got some fighters protecting the left. Now, if you don't see the fighters from the reinforcements, that's because that huge wall on the far side of the table, that's where the reinforcements are stuck behind. So they'll have to spend extra turns in order to move as quickly as they can to go around that wall, so that way they can start engaging their enemy. And that pretty much makes up the end of turn number 1 for that one. So with turn number 1 over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 2, and my friends roll off from priority to see who goes first. Alright, so that takes us directly to the top of turn number 2, and the Helot Chaos Cult is good to go first. So his very first activation, Odeth activates the Mangler, who then charges directly into Porter, engaging that guy in close combat. Needless to say, the Ambot had no problem putting a serious injury directly onto Porter, but instead of sticking around to take him out of action, he decides to follow through 2 inches, so that way he's right up next to King Slender, so that way he can try to rescue him under his next activation. So in response to that, Brother Grimm then activates Gage, who decides to takes a basic action to aim his bolt gun and another basic action to open fire with it. Managed to get 2 shots off with rapid fire dice directly into the Mangler. And one of his shots managed to penetrate the armor and managed to wound the Mangler as well, giving him 2 wounds right off the bat. So the Mangler is currently pinned, as well as suffering 2 wounds from that burst of bolter gunfire going right off across his chest. But Odeth doesn't waste any time whatsoever. He decides to do a group activation real quick with Bloodraiser, then also activates the Nameless One. The Nameless One charges directly into Porter, manages to put that guy out of action with a critical injury, so he'll need to roll up on the medical escort mission to see what happens to him as well. At the same time, Bloodraiser as well as Nerf number 1, they basically do a quick follow-up with normal movement allowance to catch up. At the same time, the Chaos Cult Witch, the Bloodraiser, puts off Dark Shield off, so that way everybody within 3 inches of him gets +1 to their save totals as well. So the Nameless One, of course, does a 2-inch follow through to get towards the center of the table, but that's when Brother Grimm decides to activate Kraze, who takes a basic action to aim with his stub cannon, another basic action to open fire with it, giving +1 to hit. He hits the Nameless One center of mass, manages to cause a wound on that guy, also manages to pin him at the same time. So while that is occurring, Death decides to activate his gang disciple, his cult disciple, the Snarl, who also does a group activation with nerf number 2, who's armed with a grenade launcher. So what ends up happening is that Snarl charges directly into Stinkum, so because he engages in close combat with him, at the same time nerf number 2 just kind of scoots over a little bit to open fire with his grenade launcher, firing a crack grenade directly into Stinkum as well. In the end, nerf number 2 has managed to put a serious injury directly onto Stinkum, and the exact same thing ends up happening for Stinkum over there on the right-hand side, with Snarl just kind of stoving his head in with a maul for the most part, with an auto pistol shot directly to his head. Meanwhile, on the far side of the table, Brother Grimm does a group activation with Blitzkrieg Bob, who also activates Grushka, as well as Fleshstick and Grizz. Both those guys make double movements over the right-hand side to get around the corner of that wall, so that way they can start engaging the enemy in the center of the battlefield. Meanwhile, Death then activates nerf number 3, then charges directly into Stinkum, and actually puts a critical injury directly on him, putting him out of action with a coup de grace. So because of that, he will need to roll up on the medical escort mission to see exactly what happened to him as well. Meanwhile, on the top of the screen, Brother Grimm then activates Rager, who then decides to scoot over to the left-hand side, moving a double movement to go around the corner, so that way he can start engaging the people eaters. And since the rest of the turn is dedicated to the people eaters, I'm just going to show you an overhead shot to show you exactly what ends up happening. The rest of the people eaters, that is half face number 2, half face number 2, as well as socket head, same thing with Hoodie, the Oculoid, and yeah, I believe that's all the other guys that they are. They basically all move up double movements directly towards the center, so that way they can start putting pressure directly in and assault through in order to rescue their leader. At the same time, on the left-hand side, half-face 2 as well as Bimbag, they move with double movements to go around the left-hand side of that wall, so that way they can lay down some overwatching fire as the reactionary forces from the Goliaths on the northern side of the table try to intercept them before they can close into the center. So with the action phase over, they go directly to the end phase, and both the Headhunter as well as Ragnarsson, they show up on the near side of the table, right within close proximity of Bloodwing as well, to try to cut off the people eaters from escaping. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that takes us directly to the end of turn number 2. So here's an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield. As you can see, the Goliath reinforcements are on either end of the table, trying to close a distance as quick as they can in order to try to intercept for the most part. The people eaters are currently assaulting the center of the battlefield in order to rescue their leader en masse, so they have a pretty good chance of doing that. At the same time, we also have Plaga Slam King showing up at the bottom of the table to try to cut their exit off. And that pretty much makes up the action phase for turn number 2. So with turn number 2 over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 3, and we roll off for priority to see which of my friends will be going first. So it takes directly to the top of turn number 3, and once again, the Chaos Cultists manage to go next. So because of that, the first thing that ends up happening is a group activation. What ends up happening is that Bloodraiser group activates with the Nameless One. The Nameless One goes charging directly into Gage on the left-hand side and engages him in close combat. Managed to put a serious injury on that fighter, so because of that, he goes crashing face down to the ground. While that's occurring, Bloodraiser just moves up his normal movement allowance directly into King Slender and spends a basic action to free him, and just like that, the leader of the people eaters is now currently free. So for Brother Grimm's next activation, he decides to activate Craze and then tries to take a basic action aim and a basic action open fire with the stub cannon, aiming it directly towards Bloodraiser. But unfortunately, though, he misses his shot, so pretty much nothing much really happens from there. So because of that, Brother Death decides to go next. And once again, Death does a group activation real quick, using his leader to group activate the Mangler. What's his name? King Slender actually does a double movement directly out of the center of the battlefield, running down the center towards the bottom there, making his way towards the table edge, so that way they escape. The Mangler gets back on his feet again with a basic action because he was pinned the last round, and he opens fire with his Grav Fist directly into Craze, hitting with a 3-inch blast radius of gravity and warping energy. To make matters worse, Craze fails his strength test, and not only does he suffer his strength test, he also suffers a memorable death, and just like that, Craze is eliminated from the roster, and he is killed right off the bat as he is transformed to gooey paste as he's being crushed by artificial gravity forces, also netting an additional experience point for the Mangler at the same time, so that part was pretty impressive. So in range with losing one of his brothers, the Plaga Slam King goes next, and Brother Grimm does a group activation with Blitzkrieg Bob. With Blitzkrieg Bob, Grushka, as well as Fleshstick, they do both spend double movements moving across the battlefield as quick as they can towards the center of the battlefield. Grizz stands his ground in order for him to take a basic action aim, as well as another basic action open fire with his heavy stubber directly to the left-hand side where Binbag, as well as Half-Face, is located at. Unfortunately for him, though, he missed both of his shots, so not much really comes from that. Meanwhile, Snarl then is activated next. He does a simple action, put a coup de grace directly onto Stinkum, giving him a grievous injury, so because of that, he jumps back as well. And because of that, he also activates the Nerf Herder, who then runs forward directly into the center to start lending him some support in close combat. At the same time, after Snarl puts off the coup de grace directly onto Stinkum, he moves back as normal movement allows to start covering the gantry walkway there, so that way they can start making good their escape. Meanwhile, on the near side of the table, Brother Grimm decides to activate Ragnarsson, who then charges directly into Bloodwing. He attacks him with his power sword. But unfortunately for him, though, he flubs his roll, and the same thing exactly happens back when Bloodwing does his counterattacks, so nothing pretty much happens. They're both just engaged in close combat for the most part. So Brother Grimm decides to use the favor of Slaanesh to activate both the Nerf Herder as well as Nerf number 3, and both those guys make a double movement, moving back out of the assault area, heading back to their retreat to their main deployment area, so that way they can start escaping. And then Brother Grimm activates Rager, who moves up his normal movement allowance and spends another basic action to open fire with a solid slug. Unfortunately for him, though, his shot goes wide and doesn't hit anybody, so his shooting was pretty much combat ineffective at that point. Meanwhile, on the near side of the table, Brother Grimm then activates the Headhunter, who goes charging directly into Bloodwing and engaging him in close combat. And in the end, the Headhunter manages to put 2 flesh wounds directly onto Bloodwing, but then again, Bloodwing gets to counterattack, and he actually puts a serious injury off on the Headhunter, so because of that, the Headhunter goes crashing down face first, suffering him from a serious injury inflicted by the Helot Cultist. And since the rest of the action phase is dedicated to the Chaos Cultists, as you can see in this photo, Half-Face number 2, as well as Binbag, as well as Gazer, as well as Sockethead, as well as the Oculoid, as well as Hoodie, those guys all start making a break for it, heading back to the deployment area using double movements in order to escape as quickly as they possibly can, because they're not planning on sticking around for the rest of the Goliaths to show up. So during the end phase, Gage managed to get back on his feet again, suffering a flesh wound, so now he's toughness 3 and he's still facing against the Nameless One in close combat. As for the Headhunter, though, he still rolls a serious injury result, so because of that, he is still laying on the ground, bleeding out for the most part at the feet of Bloodwing. So with that being said, that pretty much ends turn number 3, and we go directly to the top of turn number 4, and both Odeath as well as Brother Grimm roll off for initiative to see who has priority. So that takes us directly to the top of turn number 4 for the Helot Chaos Cultists once again, and once again, Odeath decides to use the group activation of Slaanesh's favor to activate both the Nerf Herder as well as the Oculoid. The Oculoid charges directly into the Headhunter to finish him off with the coup de grace, while the Nerf Herder charges directly into Ragnarsson in order to engage him in close combat. Unfortunately for Brother Grimm, Ragnarsson goes crashing down with the out-of-action result by suffering a head wound from the maul that was pretty much smashed to his forehead by the Nerf Herder. And at the same time, the Oculoid manages to put a grievous injury directly off onto the Headhunter as he finishes him off with a coup de grace. And just like that, 2 more members of the Goliaths of the Plaga Slam Kings go out of action. And it's at this point of the game that my buddy Brother Grimm decides to call it, because he really doesn't want to sacrifice any more Goliaths than he already has, and he doesn't believe he can stop the King Slender from escaping in time. So because of that, the game automatically ends with the Helot Chaos Cultists snatching a victory from this one. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go directly to the post game, because this battle report is now officially over. Alright, first of all, we start with the Plaga Slam Kings. For their injuries, they actually had 5 people go out of action on this one. Porter as well as Stankum both suffer critical injuries, and because of that, Brother Grimm decided to let their fate ride to see exactly what happened to them. They both get stabilized in the end, but they both suffer head injuries as a result. So Porter as well as Stankum both lose 1 point to their intelligence as well as to their willpower as well. And you can kind of see it there on the stats where I just kind of highlighted those changes in red to show that they were negatively affected. They also go into recovery for a round as well. At the same time, the Headhunter as well as Stinkum, they also suffer grievous injuries, so they'll go into recovery and miss out their next battle report. And Craze, unfortunately for him though, he died and suffered a memorable death, so he gets eliminated off the roster. For their advancements, Stinkum actually levels up to level 2, earning +1 to his cool. From their territories, they earn 1 point reputation from their settlement as well as 40 credits, and they also end up hiring a brand new Ganger. They recruited him when they rolled 2 6s for that guy, and that new Ganger's name is Lord Wes is his name. In the merchant phase, they took the 40 credits from their settlement and purchased a stub cannon as well as a brute cleaver for Lord Wes, and they also decided to give him with incendiary charges from their Promethean stash as well. For the reputation, they earn 1 point of reputation from their settlement, but they also lose a point of reputation from letting King Slender escape, so their current total is still at 27 points. The new record now is at 3 wins and 5 losses, and the new gang rating is at 1,995 points. And finally, for the People Eaters, they actually suffered no injuries on this one. They actually came away with this one unscathed. For their advancements, 5 members of the gang did level up. Snarl and Gazzer both leveled up to level 3, Snarl earning +1 to his ballistic skill, as well as Gazzer earning +1 to his weapon skill. And you can kind of see the improvements in blue on the left-hand characteristics there. Nerf number 2 and Nerf number 3 both leveled up to level 2. Both are earning +1 to their intelligence as well. And the Mangler leveled up to level 3, actually, earning +2 to his movement. So because of that, Mangler now moves 6 inches per turn. Makes that aimbot very, very deadly now because he can close the distance. From their territories, they earn 1 point reputation from their Silum as well as 50 credits. And in their Dark Ritual situation, what ended up happening is that the Mangler actually got rolled up for randomly to be chosen as the sacrifice. So because of that, he does survive it and earns 5 points of experience for doing so. At the same time, the People Eaters once again gain the favor of Slaanesh for their group activations for their battles. In the Merchant phase, they took 50 credits from their Silum as well as 15 credits from their stash, earning them a grand total of 65 credits, and they purchased a Suspenser for Snarl's heavy stubbers. That way you can fire that thing at a basic action. They took the remaining 5 credits and placed in their stash as well. For the reputation, they earned 1 point reputation from their territories, as well as 2 points reputation for the scenario, earning them a grand total of 19. Their new record now is at 3 wins and 4 losses, and their new gang rating is at 2,475 points. So that's going to do it for this one, you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest greatest hobby news related to this channel. That's going to do it for this one, you guys. We'll catch you guys next one. Peace out.